Onstage, onstage, chill time. Onstage, onstage, chill time. Onstage, onstage, chill time. Onstage, onstage, chill time.
Tonight, we welcome Oliver Graves to the stage of the Phoenix Theater. Oliver gained national exposure last year when he appeared on America's Got Talent Season 13. Though he is known widely as the goth comedian from that season, he is far more than that. And tonight, we'll get to know him, his backstory, his art, and much more. Please welcome to the program, Oliver Graves.
Welcome.
Well, thank you.
I think to give some context for your work, we're going to play a clip here from when you performed as part of Jake Ward's North Bay Cabaret episode a few months ago. And I feel like people need to see that to kind of understand what we're talking about, because when you say stand-up comedy, a lot of people in this world think one thing, and you kind of turn it on its head a little bit. So I want to play that.
They say that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Well, not if you're poisoned. Then the antidote becomes the most important meal. So I've dated enough liars that now I know a liar when I see one. But luckily, the people I'm dating now, they haven't.
I love what you do, and I love that you are on America's Got Talent, because when you think about what you do and what they feature, I mean, at least what I thought was like, this is way too strange for a mainstream show to put on. You know, it's great, but obviously we look at like what NBC, ABC, CBS puts on TV, and it's like very, 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 very broad. And I don't know that that's what you do. So my first question is like, what was the path that got you on America's Got Talent?
That started way back in 2017 when I first found out they were going to be doing something in San Jose and wasn't really sure what. There was a scout. She was going around Facebook letting comedians know, hey, we would like comedians to be in San Jose in January of 2018 to try out for America's Got Talent. I thought, well, I can drive to San Jose. I lived in North Bay. Like, that's doable. And I had a back and forth. And then it just all started to keep going kind of from that point on.
I start with America's Got Talent because that was a defining moment in your life. Like, it introduced you to so many new people that were not familiar with you prior. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah. I thought, okay, it'll be TV. Like, that's cool. I'll get that audience. Then they kind of sat on my clip for a while with, regards to social media and stuff like that. Then they put it on Facebook, and it jumped to like 20-something million views, and now it's at 40 million views. I'm just like, okay, that is not what I expected at all from this. I was hoping to be like, looking at the other comments, like 800,000 views, that's so cool. Like, that would be so cool to have almost 1 million people watch my comedy.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So were you doing the same type of comedy that you do on the show and what you do now? Was that what you were doing prior to the America's Got Talent thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I've been dabbling in stand-up comedy for, 14 years, but I really kind of was grinding and going to San Francisco and Oakland pretty hard since 2013.
Yeah. Now, was it a total surprise that you got selected to be on that show? Or did you kind of have a feeling like, I have a sense?
Once I started to have the back and forth with them, and it seemed they were positive they wanted to work with me, they wanted me to put my best foot forward. It was like, okay, they like something about what I'm doing. They just want to make sure it fits for the show. And again, I didn't really watch the show that much to know like what works, what doesn't work. Then I started to get a better idea of like, well, a lot of kids watch this show. There's a lot of kids that are on the show. So it's total range of like 8 to 80 kind of, audience. It's like, well, let's play to that. And I started really going very clean, very kind of quirky kind of humor because I wanted people who watch it to really enjoy what I do.
I love that you bring that up because there was a Reddit thread that, because you're kind of active on Reddit when I think in like there's an Oliver Graves subreddit or something. And
I have an account.
Yeah. But I mean, if somebody like says something about you or whatever, you interact with people. That's a generous thing of you to do. Mm-hmm. And there was some comment that they were like, you something about like you not reading the audience or something. And you were like, actually, I did a lot of work on making sure what I was doing would try to connect. But what an impossible thing to think about doing. I mean, like you say, 8 to 80. It's like you have so many millions of people that watch this show.
And in a huge room besides when you're doing it, that looked like it would be daunting to play in front of those people.
Which also, they kind of keep you on rails. They knew what I was going to be doing before I went out there, and they don't say don't get off your set list. Like, they don't tell you not to do that, but there's pretty clear, like, we would like you to do the set that you've prepared. Yeah. And so it's a reading an audience thing is difficult because, like, I'll do a bar show and I'll know I can interact with people. I can know to maybe get off doing really edgy stuff and go more clean. Like, but when you have about 90 seconds to 2 minutes, even if I wanted to change, it's like there's not much I could really change. It's like I got to stick to what I was planning on doing anyway.
Yeah, and it's fascinating too, because again, like your comedy is so you. It's unique. You know what I mean? I mean, that's something that Simon Cowell said to you. That we'll come back to that in a minute because I think it was a big moment. But the room's reaction to it is really funny too. You know, it's like because like broad audiences like that, they think comedy, they're like, oh, I'm supposed to react in this way. So you're getting these like huge belly laughs at some of the jokes that you're telling, which are funny. But I bet when you write them, you're not always thinking like, oh yeah, I'm going to make a room of like 5,000 people fall over. You know, 'cause some of your stuff is observational, some of your stuff is subtle. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
And I wonder for you as the writer of all that material, is it just strange to watch those clips now and just see these, just, you know, all these people just like falling over at it basically your jokes about, you know, isolation, your jokes about tough things have happened in your life and all that. It must be a very just fascinating thing to have experienced.
I think a lot of people relate though. It's a thing where I'm like, it was insane to experience. It's insane to still watch, you know, millions of people still like checking it out. But I think everyone kind of looks and goes like, I feel like that though. Like I feel rejected. I feel like nothing. I feel like that's who I am at these times in life. And they don't know how to cope with it and respond to it. And I've always tried to be very transparent, you know, be very honest with people and be very like, I'm direct. People say, you know, I'm too honest at times. I'm like, well, I'm not going to hide my feelings or sugarcoat things. And I think we all kind of wish we could do that. You know, we don't want to walk on eggshells around people. Like, well, here's someone that's doing it. And here's someone that's also feeling all that negativity and then flipping it around. It's just, I think it just captures them in a way.
Were there any good moments with hosts or notable figures that you can talk about? Because again, what makes you so fascinating is that you have you're just a very unique person that went on that show. I don't watch the show a lot, but I've seen plenty of clips. And when I learned that someone from Santa Rosa or Sonoma County was on the show, and it was you, I was like, oh, this is so good. It's so different. And that's exactly what Simon Cowell said. So I guess I'll answer one part of the question. He said of your act, we have a lot of stand-up comedians this year, and when I look back and I try to remember them all, they all blur into one type. Apart from you, you're interesting. What an incredible thing.
And I had no idea how he was going to react at all, because I'd seen how he reacted to other comedians. I tried, once I knew I was going to be on the show, I'm like, okay, I got to do research, because that's how I am. I'm meticulous in that way. I'm like, I want to know what I'm in for. I also was afraid at a time that they were going to have me on the show to be made fun of. I'm like, I know what I look like. I know what I'm doing. And there's definitely acts that go on. They're like, okay, this is a guy throwing eggs at his own face. It's like that guy doesn't think he's $1 million act. He knows what he's doing. He's just trying to get on TV. I'm like, I don't want them to think I'm just trying to get on TV. I love what I do. I know I'm funny. And I didn't want them to go, yeah, let's make fun of this guy. Which was, you know, I was willing to have that happen. Like the whole time I'm there, I'm like, if that's what they're going to do, that's what they're going to do.
Yeah, it's a risk. You're putting yourself out in front of the nation like that.
Right. To a place that is known for doing this sometime. They don't do it to everybody, but it's something that does happen on the show.
Yeah.
And then, you know, they buzz you and everything. Like, okay. So Howie, I was like, okay, if Howie doesn't like me, I'm really, really screwed. And I was like, okay, I don't know what Scary Spice will think. Like, I think she'll be entranced. Heidi was notorious for not liking stand-up comedians. Like Simon Cowell, I'm like, man, that's the one though. Like if I can get him, then, you know, everyone will get it. Like he'll explain it. He'll tell them. If not, I'm done. Like they can make it look as bad as they want it to look. They can make it look worse than it looked. But instead, he's completely on board and is just, no, I'm going to remember you. Like everything about it. He's like, he's so much funnier and smarter than I think so many people give him credit for, because he's into music and he's clearly very good at making money from music. And then he has all these other acts.
Yeah. You know what I think as you're watching the clip, Simon Cowell was reading the room himself at the time. He wasn't sure where it was going to go, I think, even halfway through your act. But in the end, he sucked in all the energy that was coming back at you and realized, oh yeah.
Were there any moments with anyone that stand out to you? Just, I mean, aside from what we saw, like, you know, I would imagine you're walking around backstage, everybody else is like putting on their makeup and like doing their vocal warm-ups and stuff, and here you are. Do you have any fun little anecdotes or stories from it?
They kept me pretty separate from the judges and the hosts. They kept it pretty like, you don't really interact with Tyra right now, and we'll let you know when you're interacting with Tyra. The other acts on the show I had some interaction with, but even still, they like to keep me away from everyone else. It was so isolating. It was really one of the hardest times of my life when I was there for the second time, because they just didn't want me really near them. Every now and then they'd have me interact. But I did have this one moment where all the judges were kind of done taking a break, and they start walking backstage, and you know, Heidi kind of storms by, Mel B storms by, Simon just does whatever he wants to do, and Howie has nothing to do. It just reminded me of, he's just a comic like everyone else. He's just kind of like waiting to entertain. And he sees me, he's like, hey buddy, you're going to kill it tonight. You know, I've been telling people about you. And I was just like, well, I hope so. I hope I do.
Far out. Yeah.
I read somewhere, and I don't even know if this is true because I didn't verify it, but that Mel B, I think she said something like, we'll talk later.
There was a lot of people didn't understand that as it kind of aired on TV. So she says to me, and they were trying to kind of let me know, get off the stage.
Yeah.
Which they don't really tell you, like, you know, they try to do it in like a polite way, like they're the judges, and you just kind of have to know, like, we're done now, walk away. And I really didn't know what to do, and eventually I just waved and walked off. So her we'll talk later was we're going to let you know you're not moving forward, not we want to see you again, we want to talk to you again. It was, you'll come back, you know, and be told goodbye.
So this is good thing for the Oliver Grave super fans to hear, you know, because there was a speculation.
I've clarified it multiple times. Yeah. No, I know. I mean, like people keep asking me, like, what's this mean? What's this mean? I'm like, it meant I was going to find out the results later, and like you watch the full episode.
See, what we all wanted was her to take you aside and have this like
moment.
I don't think her and I ever had anything ever. I had a little bit more with Tyra. Like, everyone talks to Tyra.
Yeah.
Everyone talks to her before and after and everything. And I had all these weird things happen both times with Tyra, where I was like walking away. Like, you need to do an interview with Tyra now. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like literally walking away from Tyra Banks as I'm supposed to be standing next to her. And I was like, well, I didn't know. Like,
kind of get yelled at by producers a little bit. Right?
I mean, they got it. Like, they're like, this guy just doesn't know what we're doing, and we know what we're doing. And he's told one thing, so he walked away.
So when was your first stand-up?
Very first time I ever did stand-up comedy.
In front of a room full of people, or a handful of people.
I think that I must have been 15 or 16. We used to do roasts. We really liked, me and my friends, we liked the roasts. Comedy Central did. So we roasted the seniors back behind the library and everything, and that's when I remember being in front of, I don't know, it was actually more people than I get sometimes at open mics I go to. Standing, we'd make fun of them, and then someone else would take turns, we'd make fun of them, and there'd be people I didn't know standing there watching.
Was it the typical first show experience, or did you ever have the typical like early show experience?
None of the first things I did ever were, because I remember performing not too far from here. It was called, it was before it was Roaring Donkey, it was before it was Rocks. Was it Infusions? I don't remember. But whatever bar was in that location, I did stand up there.
Yeah, Infusions. Man.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I remember doing stand up there, and even then, that wasn't my first time, because I remember doing it at a talent show in high school. And I remember doing a competition in LA.
And so you never had that typical like jarring, humbling first show, or one of the first show experiences?
I think Infusions would have been the one where it was like, oh, I don't need to be here, because they had a DJ and they were supposed to have talent that night. Like, the guy was like, I'm going to have rappers, I'm going to have comedians, I'm going to have singers. He had no one except me.
You were it.
I was it. I was the only one he was able to get to be the talent showcase of the night.
It almost seems like the way you have crafted your persona and the way that you craft your jokes almost sort of insulates you from what a lot of comics do when they do their first show. You know what I mean? Because I think part of what you do, and you know it better than I, but I think is people sometimes don't know how to react in the beginning. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think you lean into that. And I think that, it's not built like a typical stand-up set, like all the ones that Simon sees come on the show. It's sometimes the audience listening to you tell a joke and not reacting is not the worst thing.
Sometimes it's on purpose.
There's
subversion and meta humor and anti-jokes, and it's. I did an LA gig a while back, and I just watched and almost crumbled as they weren't getting my subversion humor at all. They're like, I don't get it. I'm like, because it's not that kind of joke. It's not set up punch. I flip things around so often. So if you're not ready for that kind of energy, if you're not ready for me, then yeah, you're gonna just sit there and go like, I don't get this guy, which I'm totally used to.
And maybe comfortable with it because you go into it doing jokes like that not every audience is either going to know how to react to or necessarily get. And so you don't necessarily like run off the fuel of the audience falling over laughing. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And that's different than a lot of comics.
Yeah, but that's hot stuff sometimes when 15 seconds later somebody will get it. Oh, I get it. He's an insomniac. It's smoking. And they'll be laughing probably halfway through your next joke. Do you find that happening at all?
I've definitely had jokes where I'm like, okay, this part of the room got it right away, so I wait. I think I hear comics call it like a slow burn. I've said it before on stage. It's like slow burn because you wait. I'm like, okay, this side you're gonna catch up, and then like they start laugh. Like this side gets to laugh at them, and they get to laugh, and it's an energy you don't get to play with when you're doing a 7-minute set and you're restricted. But when I've gotten to do like longer sets, be much more free. Like then you can play with the audience and play with that fourth wall, which I think that's really what makes stand up.
Yeah.
Is we're all having this happen together.
Yeah.
Do you have a joke or a bit that you keep in the set just because you like it, but like it never really gets the reaction that you hope it's going to get?
I haven't done that in a long time. It used to be like, I like this joke, I want to do it, but now I try very much just to do stuff that it's supposed to work. Although even still, I'll have jokes, I'm like, that one usually does well. Why did it not do well here? None of them are immune, it seems. Like, all of them can be gold, but some of them can still be trash. I'm like, well, I'd pull it out if it was always trash, but there's never that joke that's really doing that these days.
But like, certainly there are jokes that you think, or that you now don't do anymore, but at one point you're like, no, this joke is good. Just because you all don't get it, the joke is good. It's not trash. Do you...
No, because that's selfish. I saw too many comedians doing stuff like that where they felt entitled to be able to get up there and say whatever you want. I'm like, this isn't a soapbox to just be free and be expressive. You have a job, and that's to make people laugh. And if you're going to intentionally sabotage your set, like then you're not doing your job.
Could you go any deeper about what you feel your job is as a comic, or do you think that's it?
I think you're an entertainer. I know that there's people that feel the being political and being a sort of beacon for people, like that's part of what they do. I'm like, that's not your number one job though. Like if you want to do that, that's fine. But if you're doing things just for you, I don't think you're really servicing the audience in the way that they're there for. I could get up and I could just say really foul, nasty things, but that's not really kind of the anticipation of going to a comedy show.
I think that some people would watch you perform and using subversive, sometimes meta humor and whatever, and they would think he's doing it because he likes it. But no, you curate your material.
I mean, I've been doing it for years, and I've found how much you can get away with. You do it too much, and sometimes it's like you lose the audience, or they start to get it like a little bit ahead of you because that's all you're doing. So I've learned that this is it's a light touch and where you can be at with it, and when to just kind of play it straight too. And when an audience is a little rowdy or something, and they just kind of need it lighter. So
you mentioned the lead up to this that there were 2 DVD movies that you grew up with.
Yes.
That were hugely influential in terms of the comedic mind that you would develop.
Yes.
And so what are those?
I mean, they would happen like high school and summer. I'd have 3 months, do whatever I want, and 2 movies. I had the Transformers, the movie from 1986, the animated movie, and then Weird Al's UHF. And there was just something about all the voices and everything. I wished I could have been a voice actor. I always wished that was something I could do. And so I would mimic the voices and everything, but I'm like, nobody knows who Starscream is. Like, I can't go, I see other comedians doing impressions. I'm like, well, everybody knows who, Jack Nicholson is. I don't do Jack Nicholson because he wasn't in the Transformers movie. but I can do, Starscream, who was in the Transformers movie. And I realized, I'm like, well, I'm not that good at it. I'm like, what am I good at? And it's like, then there's Weird Al. I'm like, well, I love making fun of things that are real and parody. I'm like, that is something I'm good at. And there was a creepy scientist character in it. I'm like, that's something I'm good at. I'm very good at being very creepy and weird and just, into weird alien robot stuff. And everything about that was like, well, how was that in stand-up? Because I love Daft Punk. And people are like, well, what's a comedian that inspires you? I'm like, I don't really know. There's few, but I'm like, there's something about robots. It's the dumbest thing, but there's that stoicism sometimes. There's that gender neutrality to them that I identified with it. And also, Weird Al's funny too. I mean,
yeah.
But that was a daily thing sometimes where I'm like, those were the 2 movies I put on.
Okay, so
I bet you did not expect those 2 movies to be the 2, like you were hoping for like Elvira.
No, I wasn't hoping for anything. I think
it's probably very like kind of like mind screwing for people. Like, what?
To me, it's so much more than the movies themselves. To me, it like informs you. You know what I mean? You say like, oh, you didn't expect that, Jim. You didn't expect that because you probably thought it was going to be like a stand-up special or like a movie that has an iconic 80s or 90s comedy star. I don't know. I think what we've learned so far about you today is you're just highly atypical. When somebody says, yeah, my friend Oliver's a stand-up comic, that is going to paint a picture of a type of person. When the person hears stand-up comic, all these like things start getting filled in. You don't fill in a lot of those. Would you agree with that?
Almost on purpose. People say I'm trying to be weird to be weird. I'm like, that's not who I am though. I remember one time being out at a party when, around high school era, and I was wearing slippers and people were commenting, why are you wearing slippers? I'm like, because I felt like it. And I think back on it now, it's like, yeah, that was a weird thing, but that's what I felt like doing. Everyone else is wearing shoes, but that's what I wanted to wear. And it wasn't my house or anything. I left the house wearing them, like wearing whatever I was wearing, but I don't know. I don't try to think in traditionalism. That is something I try to do on purpose, is whatever is done because this is the way it's always done. I go, well, why? Like, what's the way we should really be doing it? Or what's the way that's the best way to do it? Or what's the way that you like to do it?
Yeah, like to do it.
Yeah.
What feels like it's going to be right
at
the moment.
So when you get to things like weddings and Thanksgiving, I'm like, I don't know about that. Because those are traditions. And
that's an expected thing a lot of times.
Yeah.
Well, you push back against that, though. I mean, I think
I do, yeah.
You definitely do. And I feel like you have been intentional in like rewriting the rules of like what your set could be and like what your art can be.
Which is really, really hard. Because when someone goes to a wedding, they want to go to a wedding. There's all these expectations of what it should be like. So when someone goes to see stand-up comedy, there's, again, all these expectations of what it should be like. So I can't tell people, not to celebrate Thanksgiving anymore. I'm not going to be on that platform. I mean, I am, but I'm not. That's not going to be my life's work. But I can make stand-up my life's work. I can have people go to stand-up comedy and go, it is an art. And Jackson Pollock did it one way with his art, just the same way I'm going to do art in my way.
Can you remember any moments where you've like found your voice or found things about, what you want to do in terms of this? Because I mean, I have to imagine the types of jokes you were telling at, when you were roasting people at 15 or 16 are different than what you're doing now.
Yes. I mean, those were so specific to the person, and also you could get away with being really hacky and low-hanging fruit. Like it's a joke you'd almost make about anyone too at the same time. It's like it's either an inside joke or just there that it's just obvious. Like people are going to know the punchline before you say it. So now it's like you got to find it's like a puzzle. It's like I'm making a puzzle every time I write a joke where maybe you have an idea of what I'm going to say, but it's not there until I actually hit you with it. And it's that sort of illusion where you're taking someone on a journey where they're like, okay, like the setup, punchline and everything. And then sometimes it's good to have something completely different, but that's part of the pacing I've learned with stand-up is how many times you can kind of get away with that, with like tricking people before their brain is just, I'm not on board. I can't wrap my head around this.
Whereas
I'm not going to give you another chance.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's like part of it is like the audience trust in you.
Yes.
You know, if you lose their trust at some point, it's very, very difficult to get it back.
Yes.
And I have to imagine that when you write a stand-up set, that plays a role. You want to get them as close to the line as possible, get them feeling uncomfortable before you bring them back.
So yeah, when I have jokes that are a bit, more harsh or edgier, and I always try to have a joke after that is much lighter. So if they pull back and if they get tense from it, we can just go, well, you know what, I'm not always just this awful, disgusting person. And sometimes I just like talk about something light like cars or dinosaurs.
How much of the act do you feel is you?
About 100%.
100%.
I was just talking with someone about this, how I went somewhere, people ask, do I leave the house without the makeup? I was like, well, clearly I don't go everywhere with the makeup on. But I have to be a little more careful now because people do recognize me. So I actually don't always go to places where I would normally have the makeup on because I don't want to have, I don't want it to be like a thing. So I went somewhere and I wasn't wearing the makeup. I was trying to be low key and I'm trying to be nice to people because I know I'm meeting people. I'm saying hi to people that I don't really know. And I just felt really out of place, trying to be polite and everything. I'm like, this is not who I am. And then a while later I went with all my makeup on and everything. And I just stood in the corner, said hi, gave one word answers. I'm like, this is so much better than trying to be nice and friendly to people, putting up a front, which is like, that's not what I do. That's not who I am. Like, this is who I am.
So what you're expected to do in real life, again, we come back to expectations. Like that is really not the real you. This is closer to the real you.
I'm not rude too. I mean, maybe something if, it's called for, but if we don't have anything to talk about, I'm not going to sit there and act like I need to talk about,
No, but societally, some people might look at that and say, some people might say, oh, you're being rude. But you would say, well, no, there's just nothing to talk about here. And I think it's an interesting juxtaposition. It's like the way people would have you behave at a job or the way people would have you behave at a wedding, that's not the real you.
Right.
And so that is the act, I feel like.
Exactly.
I feel like what you do when you perform is probably closer to, your truest self. Would you agree with that?
It's almost like Superman and Clark Kent or, Spider-Man and Peter Parker. Like who is more them? Like what's more freeing with the mask on or the mask off? I'm like, I feel much more free when I'm on stage. I can talk to people for 20 minutes when I'm on stage. I get off stage. I'm like, okay, I don't have anything to talk about now. Like I don't have a microphone in my hand.
Does it feel like therapeutic to address some of the things that you talk about, or is it just going for the funniest thing you can possibly go to?
I used to do stuff like that. I used to really want to talk about what I had going on in life. I always was dating. There's always that. So I could always write jokes about some bad date that happened or some dumb thing that I did on a date. But I found that unless it's relatable and it just comes off as petty, that people aren't really going to be interested in that. And there has to be humor. And then also when your life is nothing but dating and then your set is nothing but dating, that gets boring for an audience. Like talk about something else.
Well, on the show you talked about, I think, a family member's hoarding, for example.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about, let's see, there was the hoarding and then there was relationship stuff.
I did get a lot of dating material into the show.
Oh, bullying. You talked about bullying as well. So, I mean, I guess what you're saying is like now when you do this stuff, it's more just to like add another angle to the bit. It's not so much, or to the set, it's not so much of a like, this is something I'm wrestling with and this is my way of channeling angst around that.
It's very hard because when it's on your mind, you want to write about it, but it's that sort of, is it fun to listen to or is it fun to write? And there's a lot of things that are very fun to write that an audience doesn't enjoy listening to. There's a lot of things that are fun to say because it's shocking, and shock, you can turn into humor, but it is not always humor. It's a different emotion. It doesn't, there's shock and there's joy. I'm like, well, you want to get both if you're going to be shocking, but you can't just be shocking. And that's kind of easy. It's like if you're going to make a horror movie, it's really easy to make things really quiet, having the person stand alone in the woods, and then a monster comes out and it scares people because it was quiet and suddenly it's loud. Like, well, that can be done in every movie ever. Any movie could do that. But making someone laugh, like that's a lot trickier. And you can try to scare them and make them laugh too, but that's, are you doing that for you? I'm like, well, I try not to do that for me. I do that. It's for them.
Yeah. Well, and then you get to like, what do you do the stand-up for at all? Like, are you doing it for you? or are you doing it for the audience?
I mean, I am doing it for me because it's the only thing I've ever been good at, and I'm starting to make money doing it. So there is definitely me is doing it, but I have to do it for them because when I actually get to the show, people come in, they're coming in to see me. They're coming in because like, this is who I'm going to watch tonight. This is my night. They could have done a lot of things for their night. And it's like, well, I have to be there for them.
So you talk about some things are fun to, some things are fun to write.
Right.
And some things are fun to watch play out. I forget how you worded it. What's an example of something you think that is fun to, because you're a writer. That's, I think, something that gets missed about you. And it's totally natural that it would be.
Oh, yeah.
Because everybody's exposure to you, aside from, people you've worked with, friends, family, et cetera, it's because of America's Got Talent. So, of course, they're going to say, oh, he's the goth comic.
Well, some comedians are not writers, but most comedians are. I do know a few that have writers they work with. But, yeah, by and large, if you have ever seen a comedian or know a comedian, really, really big ones actually may have writers. Kevin Hart, I think, he's huge. He's so big that he does have writers, and he credits them. He sometimes has them come out. But yeah, it's a part of being a stand-up comedian is you write everything. And no, there's certainly things where you go, oh, this would be so good to do on stage. Oh, this would be so fun. Like just tiptoeing around like race issues or, gender issues where it's like, they're going to wonder what I'm going to say next. It's like, well, unless you have something funny to say next, you're just building tension for no reason.
It sounds like you don't have a problem leaning into stuff that could be potentially nerve-wracking for an audience. You understand stepping into the minefield can be dangerous, but also as a writer, this is not something that is overly concerning to you, just as long as you get it right. You
got to pull them out.
Yeah.
If you don't know what you're doing, you don't know where you're going, and you don't know where you're going to go next, then yeah.
What are some other writing projects that you do outside of this, or is this the primary way that you channel the writing?
Absolutely not. No, I have to write all the time because humor gets daunting. It really does. To just sit and try to do either jokes or storytelling kind of jokes, which I don't ever really do. But I'm a big fan of Dungeons and Dragons. I'm a dungeon master, which that's someone who's scripting a story and then also creating battles because it's a game too. But you have to come up with characters. You have to come up with plot elements and towns and all this other stuff. So it's a good outlet for me to be creative and come up with something completely different. Like if I don't want to, worry about what would be really funny about like a Cyclops. Like, no, it doesn't have to be funny. Like I can just make this Cyclops just a sad, depressing guy and then a guy kills him. Like that can be what happens.
So do you skew more towards like fictional type writing or more, like your life, biographical?
I mean, I still talk about my life every now and then. I want to give people like an update, which is a weird thing to say. I still feel weird saying that, like, because I have fans, which again is weird, but they like care. So I'll tell them like what's going on with me, how I feel, and it'll be a longer kind of post. But then I still need to write something. I still need to get away from that. I need to get away from the real world and be somewhere where I'm in control and can get my own ideas out and make my own rules.
So it's been a little over a year since you were cut from the show, and speaking of writing, you did a big post about how your life has changed, and it wasn't just because more fame, more fans, or whatever. But I don't want to respect your privacy because you specifically say in the post that you want to be private about the health stuff. But you basically say that when you did that show, you were not as well as you are now.
Yeah, this is where we get to me crying on the show. It was, I thought I was dying. I mean, to say it suffice, I didn't know what was wrong with me. I was going to the doctor. They didn't know what was wrong with me. We're doing tests. I got an ultrasound. I was like, okay, what are we screening, doing blood tests and all this stuff? I'm like, what are we looking for? What are we hoping to not find? Which is, it's triage. It's like, well, this is really easy, so we're going to do this and get this out of the way. I'm like, well, an ultrasound's not easy. We're getting down the line here of things we're trying to eliminate. What else can we be looking for? I'm 6.5 feet tall. I was getting around to 130, 140. I know in 2015, 2016, I was about 190. So my weight's always kind of, didn't stay 190, been up in that range, but still I'm like, that's quite a bit of weight loss. I'm like, how much more am I going to lose? Like, where are we going with this? And your brain's not working. Your body's not working. Nothing's like functioning. So I'm like, okay, well, is this it? Like, you know, where are we going now? Like, am I done? And
how long had this been going on prior to you going on America's Got Talent?
About 18 months, I was getting worse and worse and worse. Yeah, no, I was seriously ready to get back home from doing that, then to not do stand-up because I didn't think I was going to be well enough. You know, I couldn't drive to gigs. I couldn't, you know, really concentrate and do gigs. So it's like if I did a gig, I had to get booked with someone else to drive me to a gig because I wasn't going to trust myself to drive home. And
were you passing out?
Yeah, I would get drowsy. It was reminding me of when I had mono because I've had mono before, but I'm like, it's not mono because I've had it before, and just not be able to focus as well as you can. And, you know, I was getting dumped on by a lot of comics because I used to use a set list a lot. I'd get my notes right in front of me, right on me, and I would pretty much read off of it. I started to get really better about that. Then I got way worse. I was worried I couldn't memorize a 2-minute set for the TV show. That's where I was at. I almost forgot a joke for that short of a set.
So you were in crisis, really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. How much did that affect your performance, you think? Like, if you did that performance today, do you think it would be much different, or do you feel like the adrenaline of being in that moment caused you to do as well as you were going to do?
I don't think it would have affected the performance, but the whole, you know, reality show is not just the 2-minute piece I did. I absolutely affected everything else that was going on, which I think for sure could have changed things. But the big moments are what happens off stage, and I didn't really have the frame of mind to think about that and say that and to be present.
So there have been improvements on that front.
Yes, I'm holding weight better. My brain is a lot more clear, which is great. You know, memorization is much less of an issue. I'm driving all over the place myself. So I'm doing a lot, which I'm very open about how I can't have gluten because that's a thing I have to kind of be open about. So I'm not able to have breads and stuff, and I like to like wave my finger at vegans who choose not to have meat. I'm like, well, I didn't choose gluten intolerance. It chose me, all right? Like it's...
How much did gluten mess you up?
Pretty bad.
Pretty bad. So when you eliminated that...
Within the first week, I started bouncing back. And they're like, this is a really good sign. You know, I think the only thing I was eating was like tuna and pears. Just pretty much just straight. Just, that's it. So getting through that, I was like, okay. And so it was still a longer process of, will I gain weight again? Because once you start feeling better, that's not out of the woods. And like, okay, well, I literally skin and bone. Which is, again, it's really hard to look at those pictures because I can see it. I can see my ribs. I can see my knees, just everything about it. I was like, oh. And they didn't know, too. That's the thing. They love to talk about that kind of stuff on the show. And I was like, I'm not telling them. Like, this is none of their business. And it's like, I know that's what they want. But I'm like, I don't know what's wrong with me. So I'm not going to get into it. And also, I don't want people to feel bad for me. That's not what I do.
So that's what I was going to say. This has not made it into your set at all, this sort of thing.
No.
And is that the reason? Because you don't want people to pity you?
I haven't found the humor in it yet. I mean, people pity me enough as it is. I don't need them to go, oh, that's so sad. I feel so bad for him. I'm kind of going back on it a little bit because after I made that post, there was such an outpouring of support. I didn't know I could make people feel good from telling them I was going through that. And, you know, had I known, I would have told them a long time ago.
Well, you saw the reaction from the audience and from the panel at the show itself, and boy, you had how many, was it 4,000 people in that room? Is that how many people they get in there? You had a whole room full of people who were right there with you at that moment, and they were feeling it. It was pretty spectacular. And I think as people see that online, they got that same thing. They feel it for you and with you.
Well, and I think the isolation that you say that people who watch your act identify in, and they say, oh my God, like that's me. Like I feel these things. I mean, you come to represent a voice, or even people feel like they know you, you know, and so obviously you standing on the stage doing what you do, being on TV, that doesn't always sink in. Sometimes you just think, oh, people are watching me, they're laughing, and that's the end of our transaction. But I think that especially with an act as personal as yours, people start to develop a real connection with you, which is not something you predicted would happen when you went on America's Got Talent.
No,
Which
not at all.
Which is incredible. I mean, that you could even argue that is the wildest thing that has happened. You have, I would say it's not a stretch to say, tens of thousands plus of people who feel an emotional connection to what you do and who you are. I mean, that's incredible.
And I'm still, I don't know how to handle it. You know, it's like I had years to be in front of an audience and I knew how to handle that. I've practiced that, but now, and I did all the research. I looked at, well, what happened to other comedians? What did they do? What did they get? And I start looking at their social media and start looking at their fans. I'm like, okay, this is what I can expect. And I got much different what they got. So I was like, well, I don't know how to handle this. I don't know how to respond to people being so positive and so supportive of me. And having all those feelings and feeling that connection where like, they wish it was them, where they wish they could overcome their fears and they could perform or that they could be so brave to talk about their problems or whatever else that they're feeling that I am inspiring them.
Oh, they're fully relating to you.
Which I didn't think would happen.
Yeah.
How is this relatable?
Well, that's what's so good about it. And what I was getting at the beginning is it's like everybody tries to look like the most perfect and most accessible version of what America wants when they go on that show. And, a lot more people watch that show than just your typical regular normie. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And that's what's so great about it is this is what happens.
Well, I broke the barrier of the show, too. The whole viral thing is the show gets 20 million people maybe worldwide to watch. I'm like, I got 40 million on the clip.
Yeah. I mean, this is what happens when someone goes and does it their own way. And
they put it on TV, too. I was so worried that they weren't. Because I knew a comic that got on, did it, they didn't air him. I'm like, that's going to be me. Like, they're not going to get this.
So do you feel different, aside from the health stuff, do you feel like the person who sits here tonight is different than the guy who went on America's Got Talent a year ago?
No. I feel like it's still the same, kind of quiet. I like to draw. Like everything about me it's there. It's just I've gotten better at doing what I'm doing. I don't know I would have done something like this 2 years ago if someone was like, hey, you want to sit and talk with a couple people for a podcast? I'm like, I don't think so. Like that doesn't sound like me. By now I'm like, well, I think I can do that because it's gotten me to a point where I'm comfortable, but I don't know that I'm that different.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I guess you've stretched the limits of your comfort in a major way, by going on that show and by exposing yourself to so many. And it's turned out to be a pretty positive experience, And I think that when you take risks and you do stuff like that and it comes back and you're better off for it, feels good. And you feel more confident to try new things and keep doing what you're doing.
It's very nice. Yeah, it's like with kind of stand up, like I'm able to have more time on stage and do things. I feel more comfortable like doing things like this and talking with people. It's weird to say, like I don't feel different, but like I feel like I'm finally just like doing what I would want to do. Like I'm not really a comic that like drinks, but I know a lot of comics, they drink, they get looser, so they feel like they can do what they want to do. I'm like, okay, well, I don't really drink to perform. But this has gotten me to that point where I'm like, this is my drink to perform, is doing that and being more comfortable and talking to people. That's what I needed to be able to kind of be like, hey, how's it going? And sit down, do this, be on stage, and all that was that kind of icebreaker.
Do you feel like we live in a particularly lonely and isolated time?
Yes. I think it's very deceptive.
Yeah.
I think we're so connected, it fools people. You can see what someone's doing right now, check their phone, and okay, that's what they're up to. Cool. Not even talk to them, not even let them know that you just saw them do that.
Do you have people now reach out to you with their own stories of that?
Of isolation?
Of isolation, of the things that you touch on in the set, the stuff that you say is uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah. I've had
relatable.
I try to respond to a lot of people, but it gets very daunting because they all want to talk to me. I'm like, oh my God, I can't sit here all day and talk to all of you. But a lot of people are like, hey, I grew up in school like a loner, or I was like a goth kid in high school, or just so many stories where they're really like you're my spirit animal kind of thing, like, or in so many words, where they're really connecting with it. And I feel so bad because I'm not, continuing to connect with them in the way that, they would want.
But I think you are a symbol that there can be more to life than what they think. In the same way that you didn't
I hope
think.
so.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah. If anything, just if I'm making people, be a little bit better in their lives, and who cares if I make people laugh?
Yeah, I mean, if somebody was goth and felt isolated and felt alone, maybe in the Midwest or whatever, when they were a teenager, and then they see someone like you who looks quite a bit like them.
Who might not have places like San Francisco and Sacramento to hang out.
Exactly.
Where I'm totally accepted.
They see that on TV because, within 300 miles of them, they've got nothing like a San Francisco. I mean, that can be inspiring.
Which then you can go on the internet and you can have your own like Instagram or whatever you want to have, where you can be whatever you want. And then, out in Tennessee, you can do the traditional thing that doesn't scare everybody.
You wrote following your time on America's Got Talent last year, you said that you've known that you come off as a risk because everybody they put on are safe, and
right.
you are not. You feel that you can have a bigger payoff, but you can also be a bigger flop, and that's something that you've just kind of accepted about what it is that you do. Do you still agree with that a year later?
Yes and no. It depends on. So I mean, in the sense of a comedy show. Suppose you don't advertise who's on it, and people come in to see a comedy show, and then I'm on the comedy show. I think that it very much still applies, because I'm not for everybody, and that's fine. That's okay. I'm not trying to be for everybody, because that's an insane project to try to make art that everybody likes. Like, that sounds like you're going to make very boring art.
America's Got Talent. I feel like that's what most people try to craft their art as when they go on that show.
Right. Is they want the whole world to like it.
Exactly.
Well, in America, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry I interrupted.
But for me, yeah. So that's the one realm, is if I'm not like listed on the show and it's just a surprise I'm there, that's a gamble. Less so if people are coming to see me, if I'm advertised as a show. If I'm the show, I don't think that's really a risk, because I don't think anyone's going to look at that and then go, I don't know if I want to see that guy. They're going to come see me because they like me. They can be filled in with what my style is a little bit more. There can be some familiarity, and then that's less of a risk.
Well, and that's what America's Got Talent gave you, though. It gave you enough of a name to where you can now be the draw.
Yeah.
Before, there was no track record on that level to justify
Very
that.
small, yeah. I mean, a little bit in this area. I could have done a few things. Every now and then I'd see someone ask for one of the variety shows, like if I was going to be on it, which was really cool, but that's one or two people. Oh,
and I'm not saying that your career prior to America's Got Talent is insignificant. I'm just saying that when you look at the numbers, sheer numbers.
I'm saying it was. Yeah. I barely had a career.
Yeah,
it was very frustrating to kind of get pigeonholed into the variety show world, but I kind of accepted it to a degree. Like, I wasn't really getting in at comedy shows, and it's like, okay, well, I'll perform with dancers. I'll perform in October a lot.
It's Halloween month.
Yeah, yeah. If that's what it's gonna be, then that's fine. So,
yeah. I mean, to me, having just sat here and talked to you about this whole experience, this life-changing experience, the two most amazing things are, number one, connecting with a community of people and a group of people who you've touched and now have in turn touched you. And that's just unbelievable. And number two, that you get a platform now to where you don't have to be the Halloween act. Now this whole thing, round. this whole enterprise that you've devoted probably half of your life to gets to breathe. It gets a chance to breathe, and that's an incredible thing.
Yeah.
Well, Oliver, thank you for joining us tonight.
Absolutely.
For people not familiar, we first met you when you came on a couple months ago and performed with Jake Ward's North 8 Cabaret episode. But I mean, you've been on our radar since you got on America's Got Talent. Yeah. And I just remember when you went on and I was like, oh my goodness, Santa Rosa. Oh my goodness, what a fun thing.
Hometown boy.
Hometown boy. Well, I'm a Petaluma boy. It's a Petaluma boy here.
Went to the Phoenix several times growing up.
Thank you.
This is something I did want to mention.
Here we are in the Phoenix Theater, by the way, Petaluma.
Yeah. I wanted to make sure I mentioned this. It's just probably just an inside joke between my friends, the bands I used to see, because something I still say sometimes to my friends is sick shit, Ben Deaf for life, because Beneficial Defect, band I used to watch here.
Yes.
Boston Auto, band I used to watch here.
Damn
Toast Machine, another band.
Yep, all my favorites.
Phoenix kid growing up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Yeah, but I mean, it takes souls like you to make this place work. So yeah, thank you. Wow, cool.
Incredible thing.
Yeah.
OliverGravesComedy.com is the website if you want to learn
check
more
it
about
out.
this person. And you're on all the social media channels, so that's a place people
if you
could
start
go as
typing in
well.
Oliver Graves, I should come up. If you don't find it,
Yeah.
Oliver Graves, IRL at the end should get you my social medias.
Is there anything else that people should know before we get out of here?
Try to laugh today.
That's good.
Cool. Well, Oliver Graves, thank you so much for joining us, and
Thank you.
good luck with what comes next.
Thank you.